First of all, I think that Yeti is not long for the world. I mean, I assume that it will be shut down fairly quickly, particularly now that colleges and administrations realize how prevalent it is and how problematic it can be. Snapchat already had some privacy issues, and a lot of people felt that Snapchat was not going to be something that was conducive to college life, particularly. And now Yeti is sort of Snapchat on crack, and it's a position where you've got, even less privacy rights there. So I think that Yeti will ultimately end up getting shut down without any type of regulations, privacy rights, user agreements. It's pretty much the wild, wild west.
So what would it take for an app like that to be shut down? What would need to happen?
Well, realistically, it's going to take litigation, and somebody is going to have their privacy rights violated by another user on Yeti. That person's going to get an attorney to ultimately find out who's in charge of Yeti, who's administering it, and that person would ultimately have to file litigation against the Yeti establishment to decide whether or not that what they're doing is legal. And I would imagine that because it's completely unregulated right now, either Yeti will start putting in regulations similar to Snapchat, or they'll just shut down.
So talking about privacy, what are your rights if someone does post a picture of you on an app like that?
Well, it's kind of a tricky thing to deal with because you have no expectation of privacy when you do things in public. And so that's really not going to be something that you're going to see a lot of litigation about if college kids are out there drinking, using drugs, showing nudity in public, somebody takes a picture of it and then puts it on Yeti. There's really no expectation of privacy. You were in public. The problem is when you get into situations where you have people in private settings, particularly of a sexual nature. If somebody takes pictures and then puts them up on Yeti, you do have an expectation of privacy there. And the issue that we're going to see, I'm thinking, where it's a little bit more tricky, is when you're at, say, a party. And whether or not there's an expectation of privacy there or not remains to be seen. Some people would argue, yes, I'm at a private party in a private home. I am not out in the open. I'm not out in public. Others would say, you're at a party, people are coming and going, and this is something that ultimately you shouldn't have an expectation of privacy over. So that's where the middle ground is going to be and what's going to make this a little bit more tricky. The funny thing about Yeti right now, though, is a lot of the pictures that we're seeing, and it's young, but a lot of the pictures that we're seeing are actually taken by the users themselves. So that doesn't even implicate privacy rights at all.
What happens if someone were to take a screenshot of one of those pictures? Because with Yeti, the pictures disappear after a certain time, but someone could easily take a screenshot. Could that image be used against you, used to bring criminal charges against you, maybe even if it's a picture of you doing drugs?
Absolutely. First and foremost, and Snapchat has gone through this as well, there are certain search and seizure laws that apply to pictures, cell phone images, that govern what the police can and can't do. That doesn't govern what regular citizens can and can't do. So if somebody is sent a picture, if say one person's using drugs and they send that through Yeti to another person or a group of people, somebody screenshots it, which can happen very quickly. It's not supposed to be able to be screenshot, but people have found ways around Snapchat and they're going to find ways around Yeti for sure. And then they get that picture and they send it to the police. There are no search and seizure violations there because it wasn't a government action. It wasn't the police action taking those pictures. It was another citizen who then turned it over to the police. So if that were to happen, then that is clearly evidence against the person, and that's something that could be used in their criminal prosecution.
So then a police agency or like ODU police, university police, they can't download the app themselves and like look through the pictures and use that to, prosecute somebody?
They could. They could also do that if it's out on a public domain. They could download the app and use them as well. There's no doubt about that. When I said that they're governed by search and seizure laws, they couldn't take somebody's mobile device and then start going through it and take pictures and then use those in prosecution. That's what would not be permitted by any type of police action. But what you could do if this is completely public, as we're seeing that it is, The police could just cruise through all of these pictures, and if they recognize somebody who's obviously doing something illegal, and in a small community like a campus, that's likely to happen, then yes, that person could be criminally prosecuted for sure.
But what is the best way to control this thing? Obviously, this gives the school a very bad image.
Sure. This is very user driven. So honestly, the best way to control it is for college students not to use it. Now that's unlikely. We know that college students are going to go and use these apps. It's unfortunate, honestly, that they are, because it seems that they don't have an understanding that everything that's posted, even if it's supposed to be private, really isn't. And for them to brazenly post pictures of drug use and sex and violence and guns, that's just not smart thinking. But unfortunately, there's no real regulation that can prevent this from happening. If it's not Yeti or if it's not Snapchat, it'll be something else. So the only way to really prevent this from happening is for the students to use better judgment.
And with Yeti being so shady and so underground, not having even a working website, are you sure that litigation for this app is, in the near future?
I'm not sure that litigation's in the near future, but it certainly could happen. I mean, think about Bitcoins and online currency and how there were huge drug sites set up that were exchanging currency and drugs all in an electronic online basis. And that was a very shady underground thing. And then the person who ultimately started that has been federally indicted and is going to go to jail for decades. So to think that just because it's shady and it's underground that litigation won't find it, that's not a really reasonable way to think about it. Unless Yeti shuts down or regulates itself, litigation is going to come to Yeti's doorstep.